Imagine a boy, just 6 years old, standing in the snow-covered streets of a small Swedish village, selling matchboxes. No wealth, no legacy, just a burning desire to create something bigger than himself. What he didn't know at the time was that this small spark would ignite a global empire. The rise of Nintendo wasn't just about video games. It was a revolution. But what happened behind the scenes? Well, that's a story full of twists you won't see coming. The year is 1889. The world hasn't even heard of video games yet, but a young man named Fusajiro Yamauchi is dreaming big. He doesn't want to create anything tech-related. No, his dream is simple, playing cards. But these weren't just any cards. They were hand-painted, intricate pieces of art called hanafuda. The catch: playing cards were banned in Japan at the time because they were linked to underground gambling, controlled by the Yakuza, Japan's infamous mafia. But Fusajiro wasn't scared. He saw an opportunity where others saw danger. He started creating these cards, and guess who became his biggest customer? The Yakuza. Imagine that. Nintendo's first big client was the mafia. How wild is that? But what happened next? Fusajiro wasn't just playing cards with his future. He was stacking the deck for something far bigger. By the 1930s, Fusajiro was ready to retire, but there was a problem. He had no son to take over the business. So, like any good patriarch, he arranged for his daughter to marry a solid businessman, Sekiryo Yamauchi. Sekiryo was supposed to take charge. But plot twist. In 1932, Sekiryo's son-in-law, the man set to lead Nintendo, walked out on the family, leaving his 5-year-old son, Hiroshi Yamauchi, to take over. A 5-year-old. Can you even imagine the pressure on this little kid? Hiroshi was just trying to be a kid, but life had other plans. By 21, Hiroshi was studying law, but when his grandfather suffered a stroke, Hiroshi was pulled from university and suddenly thrust into the most important role of his life. With the weight of the world on his shoulders, Hiroshi didn't just step into the role, he seized it. His first act: firing anyone who questioned his authority, even family. Talk about a power move. But Hiroshi had no idea what was coming next. Would he crumble under the pressure, or would he rise to the occasion? Hiroshi Yamauchi wasn't just about playing cards. No, he had bigger dreams. And so, he started expanding. Instant rice? Check. Taxes? Check. Love hotels? You heard that right. Love hotels, where rooms were rented by the hour. And guess what? None of these ventures worked. It was a mess. Nintendo was about to hit rock bottom. You could feel the tension building. Would Hiroshi's wild ideas pay off or ruin everything? But then, a light bulb moment. Hiroshi took a trip to the United States, and suddenly, he saw it. The power of Disney. It wasn't just about gambling anymore. It was about family, about creating characters people could love. Hiroshi struck a licensing deal with Disney to print their characters on Nintendo's cards. And it worked. Nintendo started moving away from its past, stepping into a whole new world of possibilities. But that was just the beginning of Hiroshi's wild ride. What would he do next? No one could have predicted it. One day, Hiroshi was walking through the factory when he saw something that would change everything. Gunpei Yokoi, one of Nintendo's employees, was playing with a plastic extendable hand. It seemed like nothing special, but Hiroshi's eyes lit up. Let's make this toy, he decided. And just like that, the Ultra Hand was born. It became a huge hit, selling over 1 million units. Nintendo wasn't just a playing card company anymore. It was officially in the toy business. But Hiroshi didn't stop there. He started looking at something bigger, something revolutionary. In the 1970s, he began thinking about electronic toys, and eventually, video games. Could that be the future? He wasn't sure yet, but he was about to take a leap into uncharted waters. And then, the real magic happened. The 1980s came, and Nintendo wasn't just dabbling in electronics anymore. They were diving headfirst into the world of video games. In 1981, a young, untested game designer named Shigeru Miyamoto was given a nearly impossible task. Take leftover radar scope arcade cabinets and turn them into something successful. What did he do? He didn't stick to the formula. Miyamoto created a game where the main character, Jumpman, had to jump over barrels and save a princess from a giant ape. Donkey Kong was born, and it didn't just succeed, it exploded. The game raked in a staggering $280 million in just 2 years. But here's the crazy part. Jumpman didn't even have a name. It was only after a brainstorming session that Mario was chosen, named after the landlord of their warehouse. Can you imagine? A game-changing character named after someone so ordinary. It was just the beginning. But here's where the tension ramps up. In the background, the video game world was about to crash hard. Would Nintendo survive the storm? Just as Donkey Kong was a massive hit, disaster loomed. The video game industry was in chaos. There were too many consoles, too many bad games. By 1983, the market collapsed. Companies went bankrupt. Atari, a giant of the time, fell apart. Nintendo was teetering on the edge of disaster. Could they survive? The pressure was unbearable. But Hiroshi wasn't about to back down. He saw an opening. And in 1985, he launched the Nintendo Entertainment System. It was unlike anything else. The Nintendo Entertainment System wasn't just another console. It was cheaper, more fun, and offered groundbreaking games like Super Mario Bros. The response was insane. In just 2 years, the Nintendo Entertainment System sold over 60 million units. Nintendo wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. They had come back from the brink. But what would happen next? Were they about to become untouchable? Nintendo was on top. But in the early 90s, Sega came swinging. They launched the Genesis, a console with better graphics and more mature games. Sega played hard, calling the Genesis the cool console, targeting the rebellious gamers. It was an all-out battle. But Nintendo wasn't going down without a fight. In 1991, they released the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It wasn't just a console, it was an experience. With games like Super Mario World and The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Nintendo was setting the bar. Sega tried to undercut Nintendo on price, but it was no use. Nintendo's lineup of games was unbeatable. The console wars raged on, but Nintendo stood victorious. Just when Nintendo thought they had won, something unexpected happened. In 1991, Sony partnered with Nintendo to develop a new CD-ROM add-on for the SNES. But at the last minute, Nintendo made a shocking decision. They pulled the plug on Sony. Sony was furious. They didn't take it lying down. Instead, they went on to create their own gaming division and launched the PlayStation in 1994. The PlayStation was a game changer. With 3D graphics, a massive game library, and an affordable price, it changed the entire industry. Sony had just created a monster, and Nintendo had no choice but to face their biggest rival yet. By the 2000s, Sony's PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's Xbox were dominating the gaming scene. Nintendo was struggling to keep up. But then, something incredible happened. In 2006, under the leadership of Satoru Iwata, Nintendo released the Wii. It didn't have the best graphics, but it had something better: innovation. The Wii introduced motion controls, allowing players to interact with games in a whole new way. It was a massive success, selling over 100 million units worldwide. Nintendo had found a way to make gaming accessible to everyone, not just hardcore players. And once again, they had proven that doing things differently was the key to winning. From mafia ties to family drama, instant rice to love hotels, Nintendo has overcome it all. If you enjoyed this crazy ride through Nintendo's history, drop a comment and let us know. What's your favorite Nintendo game or character? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insane stories from the world of gaming. What will Nintendo do next? We can't wait to find out.